I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Cryptid Podcast. You guys, I'm so happy you're here. I have an amazing guest with me tonight. Before I introduce that person, I just want to say thank you so much for showing all the support that you do to the channel, the likes, the shares, the subs, the memberships. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. Without you guys, I would not be able to do it. If you guys have had an encounter and you'd like to come on the show, please send me an email at thecryptidpodcast72@gmail.com. That's thecryptidpodcast72@gmail.com. And for those of you who don't already know, my buddy Josh from Mysteries Unknown and I have combined forces to create Mysteries and Cryptids. That's right. You get both podcasts in one. We launched a website. It's www.mysteriesandcryptids.com. There's a few things that we're still ironing out, all the little wrinkles or fixing the kinks. But when we're 100% up, we're definitely let everybody know. But you can still go on there. You can check it out. You can look at some merch. And yeah, don't forget www.mysteriesandcryptids.com. Now, you guys, the person that I'm bringing on tonight really doesn't need an introduction. Him and his partner, wife, are I consider one of the premier researchers and investigators, boots on the ground, that's out there. You may know them from Hellbent Holler. You guys, I have with me tonight Mr. Joe Doyle. Joe, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well, man. Good to see you.
It's good seeing you, man. I was when I went to the Tennessee Wildman and Cryptid Con, you and Jesse were two of the people I absolutely wanted to meet. And you guys were very gracious. You guys were good humored. You took the time for anybody that came up to your table to talk to, took pictures with, signed autographs. So yeah, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show tonight.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on.
So, before we get in, because I just told you, I got a sheet of questions here. Why don't you just jump in and let everybody know where they can find you?
Yeah, they can find me. Jessie, my wife, has a channel called Hellbent Holler. The outdoor paranormal exploration that we do is under the term Hellbent Holler. That's our two-person team. We release usually twice a month. We'll release investigations. We're kind of at the mercy of whatever's going on out there. You know, sometimes we'll go through dry spells where we just don't encounter anything strange. Other times it seems like it's happening rapid fire out there. But so we're on that channel. We do a Monday night live stream every night where we just kind of like discuss all things paranormal, cryptid, high strangeness, the unknown. And then we've been in quite a few small town monsters documentaries and videos as well. I think we've done probably, 10 or 12 of those, everything from their works on the Land Between the Lakes. We've done a lot of stuff with Alex Petikoff. And we just released a Bigfoot in the Uwaris documentary on small town monsters that was really well received. So we are, that was the latest thing that we've done with them. So you can pretty much find us anywhere on the Small Town Monsters channel or on Hellbent Holler.
All right. And that's on YouTube, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. So this is my 1-year anniversary of doing the Cryptid Podcast. This month is
anniversary. So
and so I am super stoked. I look back and look how my channel's grown and how it's changed. And again, I still kind of pinch myself when I have people like you and Daryl Denton and Ron Moorhead and MK Davis and Jeremiah Byron from Bigfoot Society. I'm a little podcaster, and you guys are helping me spread your guys' word and getting what you guys do out there. So I hope it's okay. I prepared a list of names, or not names, a list. We'll talk about names later, but a list of questions. And normally the way I do interviews is you have an encounter, I go off camera, I write down questions, I let
Mhm.
you have the show to tell your encounter, then I come on and ask questions. But I've been working all day on questions, and so we'll just do a little Q&A with some filler in it. Is that cool?
That sounds great to me, man. Whatever.
Aw
I'm down for anything.
awesome. So, what was the first, um what first pulled you into the world of cryptids and paranormal investigation?
Well, that started for me as a kid. I grew up in Virginia, up near the Virginia-West Virginia border. And strangely enough, when I was a kid, there wasn't really a big culture of like Bigfoot up there. Mostly you would hear like outdoor paranormal stories, you know. And even when I was in Boy Scouts, which is where I may have had a sighting at, even telling stories around the campfire, you really didn't tell Bigfoot stories. It was always like, just ghost type stuff. So, the area I grew up in, it's very, very old. My hometown was very old. Pre-Revolutionary War. It had some significance in the Revolutionary War. So there's a lot of like local ghost stories up there. Uh, Never really anything that really interested me that much. I was always into folklore and mythology, but more on the mythology side of it. You know what I'm saying? Which led me to eventually get involved in anthropology down the road. So I uh, say that because my mind really wasn't primed towards Bigfoot, you know. And when I was on a scouting trip as a kid, I was doing a thing called the Order of the Arrow, which is an
Mhm.
induction within like a kind of like a separate subgroup in the Boy Scouts. And part of that induction is they will take you out on like usually a 3-day trip of like hard labor. You barely eat. You take a vow of silence, the whole 9 yards. It's very steeped in tradition to kind of get you into this like group. Part of the tradition is that you will sleep alone under the stars. You have no tent or anything like that. And part of that tradition as well is that you have to sleep wherever they park you at. And the scout leaders and like the older guys, are usually putting you in the most uncomfortable possible position ever, on top of a root, on top of a rock, somewhere where if it rains, the water's going to trickle down and, you can't move from that spot. So I'm laying there and, I've done a lot of outdoor activities. I lived in a pretty rural area, pretty small town, surrounded by a lot of forested area, a lot of countryside. I'd been in the scouts for like a while, so I'd spent a lot of time outdoors. But this obviously it's something that it was kind of a big deal to a kid. So I'm laying there, I'm under the stars, my adrenaline's pumping, I'm not sleeping, and I start hearing something, and I look up. It was pretty well lit out that night, good moon and all that, and I see something peeking at me from behind a tree. Classic tree peeking behavior that you would know about right now, but. And it was just such a weird thing. Just this creature kind of coming out from behind a tree, looking at me. We're maintaining eye contact. I can't figure out why it's hiding behind the tree because I see it, and even then, it's not completely hidden behind the tree once you know it's there. And whatever it was, just kind of creeps out. And when I say creep, like it creeped, and just maintained eye contact with me the entire time, and then just disappeared into the brush. So I'm a kid, you know what I'm saying? I'm young. I'm in a really unfamiliar situation. I'm already stressed out. It's fun, but it's also exciting and kind of scary for a kid. You're getting ready to do this new adventure. And I'm supposed to be quiet the entire time. You're supposed to swear you're supposed to not talk the entire weekend. And I'm laying there and I don't know what I've seen. I don't know if somebody's like messing with me. I don't know if this is like it's like a scoutmaster in a suit and they're trying to get me to break this little vow of silence that we've supposedly taken. So I just lay there terrified for the rest of the night. Never see or hear anything else again for the rest of the evening. The next day, they, break you into small groups and they put you usually with an older scout. And you have like certain, like, basically physical labor is what they do. They use you for free labor over the weekend. It's supposed to be character building, but it's basically if they need like lean-tos like repaired or clearing paths or anything like that. So you're not supposed to talk at all. But as luck would have it, the group that I was with, the older scout that we were with was hearing impaired. So of course everybody's talking as soon as his back is turned. And I'm just waiting for somebody else to go, hey, did you see anything weird last night? And nobody ever does. So the entire weekend goes by, nobody else mentions seeing anything. And at the end of it, it's a tradition where you don't really get a lot of food over that course of the weekend. So at the end of it, when you've done the labor and you've basically been inducted in, there's like a steak dinner that's traditional. So we're sitting there at the steak dinner, and I keep waiting for one of the scoutmasters to come out in a gorilla suit, basically, and just go, you dumb kids, we hoaxed you, blah, blah, blah. And nobody ever says or does anything about it. And, at that dinner, you can kind of talk freely. And I'm kind of just very cautiously broaching the subject with other people going, I see anything weird this weekend? And just nothing. Nobody had anything at all. And, when you're a kid like that, you really don't have the self-confidence to start telling people, well, that's all especially I was a little bit younger than everybody else there too. So that was already kind of intimidating. So I never said anything. But over the years, as I've thought about it, I'm just going, if that was a suit, that was a really good suit. And are they really going to invest that much time and money? I mean, these are like blue collar guys that are just volunteering their time. None of them are wealthy. Are you really going to spend that much money getting something like that made and not really have a punchline to it, if that makes sense? So I always tell people, and I don't really talk about this a lot because I've got to be honest about it. I don't know if what I saw was real. I can't swear that I wasn't hoaxed. And if you put a gun to my head, I couldn't even swear that I didn't fall asleep and partially dream it. Seemed like I was awake, but you just can't really tell. So regardless of what happened, that's kind of what started me on this journey. And I was actually talking to Alex Petikoff from Small Town Monsters about this. And I even said, if it was somebody that hoaxed me, if I could go back in time, I'd shake their hand at this point because they just put me on the most amazing journey from like that point on. So I was involved with like Bigfoot research pretty much for the rest of my life at that point. However, I really didn't have any luck with it. I didn't really, I've lived all throughout the South from, Virginia down through Georgia, Louisiana, back up to South Carolina. And, I've gone into hot spots and whatnot, and I really never had anything happen to me. So, that was always something that I was interested in, but it at a certain point, it became more of a clinical interest. It wasn't really anything. I would go out and I'd go through the motions, but I really didn't expect anything to happen. I had a very, very, very firm flesh and blood kind of like take on things at that point, because what I saw was physical. It made noise when it moved. It reflected light. When it moved into the brush, I heard it. I heard it walk. I didn't get up and look for prints. Again, I'm scared to move from that spot. So I don't know if it left tracks or not, but what I saw looked physical. So, fast forward to like years and years later, I'm living in Louisiana. I'm living in New Orleans in the French Quarter, and still very interested in the topic, but it was more of an entertainment thing like that. And every so often I think back to that night and whether it really happened or not. And, there's a lot of years on that, man. I'm in my 50s now. So, you second guess yourself, but I'm still not sure what happened that night. I can't positively swear that what I saw was a Bigfoot, but, anyway, I meet my wife, Jessie, and she's from this portion of South Carolina that we're currently living in. So we meet in New Orleans and we decide to move back up into this region and move back up here. And once we move back up, we're living in a pretty rural area. And we start basically just hiking a bunch. We're doing a lot of outdoor activities. We've been living in New Orleans, the city, for a while. We were back in a rural area. So we're doing a lot of hiking at that point. And we still both, now Jessie was always more interested in the paranormal when she came into it. And that's something that she maintained her entire life. A little side note, Jessie's from the mountains of Western North Carolina, very, very, very remote areas in the mountains there. Her family probably got off the boat, planted there, and then just never left at that point. And her family's very, very tied into that really weird, unique blend of like the paranormal and folklore that exists in the Southern Appalachian region. She has, I always get it if it's like great or great, grandmother was like a really well-known, like they call them granny witches up there. And they're like a combination of healer, wise woman, and all that. But it's a very unique, distinctly Appalachian custom that's very tied into her family. So she was always very tied into the paranormal and the supernatural, not so much into Bigfoot and the physical stuff like that. So we're living in the upstate of South Carolina, doing a lot of hiking. We're both interested in some weird stuff They don't really kind of intersect with one another. You know, I'm pretty much just flesh and blood Bigfoot. That's all I'm interested in. Quite honestly, I thought a lot of the other phenomena kind of silly, to be honest with you. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I was familiar with a lot of UFO stuff, didn't really have any interest in it. Didn't really have an interest in the paranormal. Didn't really find a lot of the other stuff like just really interesting to like spend any time on it. But Jesse had heard on a podcast, a guy was a guest on there, and he had gone to an area that was fairly close to us. And he himself was like a really experienced outdoorsman, hiker, worked in a lot of like outdoors related type fields, search and rescue, everything like that. And he had hiked out to a local waterfall. And he basically recounted the story of running into what he termed as a shape-shifting witch, a woman that appeared to like change form, over the course of the day in his encounter with her. I don't know how much credence I put behind the story at the time. It was like amusing to hear, it was right down the road. Now, I've since met that guy and talked to him, and the story's real, but at the time it was just gonna be like a cool place for us to go check. If you're familiar with the term legend tripping, where people just kind of go out and casually investigate areas that are around them where strange things have supposedly happened. So we legend tripped. We legend tripped up to a place called Panthertown Valley, and we went up there, and pretty much from the moment we entered the woods, it got stranger and stranger and stranger and stranger, to the point where we were having like GPS malfunctions. Things were being thrown at us out of the woods. We were hearing like voices, but we couldn't find anyone in that area. We were hearing like a woman's laughter. At one point I don't know if you're familiar with this or not. Have you ever seen when people make dolls and they used wizened apples as heads, and they kind of carve a little face in there, and the apple dries out and begins just to become wizened at that point?
Yep.
Very pale, very overly wrinkled face disappearing back into the brush that just terrified me. And it was a freak show. It was not what we expected in the slightest. So we got out of there. We get back to the vehicle. We're driving home. It's a couple of hours. We don't talk the entire way, And even then I just kind of glossed over all of that. It was a pretty traumatic experience. We just had so much strange stuff happen. I mean, we left out of those woods and I had my sidearm drawn the entire time, like leaving out. And I'm not somebody that is willy-nilly to pull a firearm out, but we got home, and then like the next day we're like, are we going to talk about this, about what happened yesterday? I mean, again, I was very open to the idea that Sasquatch existed, but I was very much a naysayer for a lot of the other stranger stuff. It's just how I was. I needed to experience it for myself to give it any credence at that point. But we kind of sat down, Jesse and I, and we were like, all right, well, we're kind of at a crossroads right now. We're either never going into the woods ever again, or let's get a camera and see if we can kind of document some of this stuff, And we basically, we already had a lot of outdoor gear. We were already in like really good shape. We were, we had our hiking gear, our camping gear, everything like that. So we went and bought a little Chinese knockoff night vision camcorder off of Amazon Warehouse. We bought it used. And we just started going out into areas that supposedly had strange activity going on. And we started to encounter stuff. And the more we encountered, the more we got drawn into this, until it basically finally became an obsession, which is basically where we're at today with it. Hyper focused on trying to document the weirder stuff out there. And as this has kind of developed, the whole purpose of Hellbent Holler is to kind of advance the subject beyond just campfire stories or just really interesting accounts. It's to kind of like basically put some meat on the bone as far as like a lot of these phenomena go, because these things are happening. People are experiencing them. They're just very, 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 very difficult to document. So that's been kind of our passion and our pursuit at this point, is to kind of go into these areas and try to show that a lot of the stuff that people are reporting actually exists, and it's actually encountered out there. And when I say it's an obsession, it's an obsession. I mean, we both work regular jobs to kind of help fund this, as it's grown, as Hellbent Holler's grown, we've gotten a lot of good community support. So we've got a community that kind of helps support what we do at this point. It's still very expensive to do it. So but again, that's basically the entire focus of our lives right now. If we're not asleep or working the jobs that we use to help kind of fund this stuff, we're engaged in some aspect of preparing or actually investigating. When I say the paranormal, I'm kind of lumping it all into there. Everything that's kind of outside our normal consensus reality at this point. So Hellbent Holler has just been, if you could see what I see right now, you'd see tripods, backpacks, cameras, thermal imagers, recording devices. I mean, our house is always kind of in a constant state of chaos just because we've either rushed out of the woods, gone back to our normal lives for a while, and then, back out into the woods we go at that point. So it's very strange. Once you get a glimpse kind of behind the curtain, you go one of two ways. You either don't want to talk about it, which I'm sure people like that, just like I do.
Yep.
Or you become absolutely obsessed with it. You become just obsessed with it. And that's where Jesse and I are at right now. We're to the point now where I'm really happy with the way Hellbent Holler has kind of developed on this. I mean, we're two people. So which is good. It works in our favor to a certain degree. You don't run into the complexities of trying to use a huge group with this. You start running into the egos and just the discord that can sometimes happen. But Jesse and I are a married couple, so we can get into an argument over something, and then we're still, it's not going to break the group up or anything. But over the past 5 years, we've really developed in a way that I'm really pleased about and really proud about. We picked up a lot of very interesting skill sets doing this. I always tell people that if we hung this up tomorrow, it'd be so worth it, man. Just with the stuff that we've learned how to do and just the growth that we've encountered as just human beings doing this stuff. I didn't know how cameras worked back in the day. I didn't know anything about that. So we've had to basically train ourselves in a lot of these skills. Jesse dove into this just feet first, man. I mean, she's had structured survival training. She was a junior survival instructor at one of the local schools here, wilderness first aid certified, just everything like that. Just the stuff that you need to do to be able to go out into the woods for days at a time and look for this stuff.
Yeah.
And, you've seen the channel. You kind of know what we do at this point. We're very techy. The whole goal is not to go out there and just walk away with a story. The goal is to walk out there and capture something that maybe backs up a claim that another person has made, but maybe they were just dismissed as being crazy or lying or hoaxing. Well, we can go out there and kind of document some of these phenomena and show, no, these people are not lying. These things are actually happening. The world's a lot weirder than what a lot of people really, really kind of understand.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of a good segue into my next question. So Hellbent Holler has a very distinctive edge about it. It's edgy, it's gritty, it's real, it's immersive. So what was your guys' original vision behind Hellbent Holler? And if, has it evolved over time to what we see now?
It's intensified over time. We were actually living in a holler and Jesse, Hellbent describes Jesse to a T. You know what I'm saying? She actually has Hellbent tattooed across her knuckles. So Jesse's kind of the creative force with Hellbent Holler, and then I'm kind of the nuts and bolts guy. But she came up with this term, Hellbent Holler, and as soon as she said it, I just went, well, that makes sense to us. It's not going to make sense to anybody else, but who cares, And the whole goal of this is we really quickly kind of learned that I'm very careful when I try to say this. So you have basically people that are investigating these sorts of topics. You've got your stuff that's on TV, very well equipped. They've got all the bells and whistles. They've got access to stuff that a lot of regular run of the mill people don't really have access to. But you can't really trust it a lot of times. You know what I'm saying? Because it's TV. They got to sell advertising space. If you have an investigation and nothing happens, well, they're going to make something happen because they got to sell that cat litter that their sponsor is, paying for that advertising time. And then on the flip side, you have people that are, that are very enthusiastic and amateur researchers and whatnot. And a lot of times, they don't have access to that sort of equipment at that point. So our goal was to kind of go, all right, we want to bridge those two worlds at it. We want to go in with the skill set and the equipment and the technology necessary to try to capture this stuff. but we want to remain independent on that. We've had several offers. Now, of course, all cryptid and paranormal programming is pretty much dropped by the wayside on like network television. You know, you've got Ghost Adventures and Expedition Bigfoot, and that's it. But back in the day when it was still going strong, we would get like 2 or 3 offers like a month to like, you know, talk to them about doing stuff. When I say we, Jesse, basically, you know what I'm saying? I'm another gray bearded white guy doing this stuff. You know, Jesse's kind of unique in the field, but that was never anything that we really wanted to get involved in because the authenticity is just not there, you know?
Yep.
It's corporate Bigfoot, you know, and it's cool. Don't get me wrong. I watch it just like a lot of other people do. I enjoy it, you know?
Yeah.
But that wasn't our goal. Our goal is that we went into something kind of like laughing about it and naysaying it only to just get smacked in the face with how real it was.
Yeah.
And we wanted to kind of, and all we had was stories that day. We didn't have any cameras with us. We had our cell phones. The cell phone camera and like the video options would like malfunction constantly on us. We couldn't record any of that, you know? All we were left with was just another story, like the guy who gave the story that originally brought us there.
Yeah.
So the goal of it was to just dive in like head first and try to go out there and, you know, there's various like paranormal teams, Bigfoot researchers and whatnot, all across the world, definitely all across North America. But our big thing is that we were going that it seems like the larger the group of people, the less likely they are to encounter anything. So we figured 2 was the sweet spot. You're not out there alone, but you're out there with a very, very, very small group, you know, to go in, to take it extremely seriously and treat it as a growing experience. Like I said, what we've done is intensified. Now I've changed personally a great deal. I was a really just diehard flesh and blood Bigfoot guy back in the day, you know. I'm open to almost damn near anything at this point. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Because every time I've kind of made an imaginary boundary as to what I thought was real, but nothing beyond that, that boundary's been kind of just destroyed at that point. So as this is intensified, we've gotten very, 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 we've been able to expand our horizons a lot. Just with the ability to get into certain areas, do certain things. Our technical expertise has grown. We're doing weird stuff that nobody else out there is doing at this point. And it was just kind of like, once I was able to get over that stumbling block that this stuff was real and that there was some of these stories at least were real, that some of these things were real. Once we got over that stumbling block, and Jesse was always far more open than I was, but we just dove in with both feet, man. I mean, it's, you know, right now we're really blending a lot of like disciplines for stuff. We do stuff that you would normally find associated with like traditional ghost hunters or even people that are involved with like UFO and UAP technology.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that, you know, at least in some cases, there's a lot of tie-in between all of these phenomena. So, you know, we're doing weird experiments with electromagnetism. We're doing, you know, I think we're the only Bigfoot focused team that has infrasound detection equipment that's out there running it. We really go into some, I don't think infrasound is what's causing the zapping effect. So I got this equipment built to kind of disprove that. It's happening. People are being zapped. It's happened to Jesse in front of my very eyes before, but it's not infrasound based. It's if anything, it's as weird as it sounds. It's something electromagnetic going on, or, you know, ionizing, non-ionizing radiation. It's something beyond and more exotic than just low frequency sound waves that are hitting people. But
yeah,
anyway, to digress too much, but that's just been Hellbent Holler. Hellbent Holler has just been like, we've stayed very insulated. We've stayed small. We don't really do a lot with other groups outside of like Small Town Monsters and a handful of other people. So that way we don't really get, you know, my problem with Bigfoot research is we've been doing the same thing basically since the Patterson Gimlin film came out, and we haven't really advanced it. You know what I'm saying? You know, we're casting footprints, we're banging on trees with sticks, you know. Yeah. It's time to kind of advance it and kind of just, and it doesn't matter what direction you go in, just try something new, try something different. So, you know, we get a lot of pushback from like some of the more traditional Bigfoot crowd. You know, I've got people that I was friends with years that are Bigfoot researchers that really don't want to talk to me nowadays because I'm a little out there, but I'm out there because of personal experience, you know,
Right.
and I'm out there because of, you know, quantifiable data. You know, we've experienced this stuff, we've documented this stuff, we've recorded this stuff.
Well, it's a
I can't
personal
say
growth is with
oh,
you as
absolutely.
well. You know, and if you have people that are just staying stuck in one place
Mhm,
on what this creature could be,
mhm.
you're not helping the community at all.
Well, nobody can prove anything at this point, and
Right.
that's where we're at. That's where we're at with it. And I'm always telling people when people will contact us and they go, "Hey, I'm interested in getting involved in this." I'm just going, "All right, don't get involved in any social structure at first. You know, other Bigfoot groups or anything like that. You know, kind of develop your own thing." I'm all for a holistic approach to like Bigfoot stuff. If somebody wants to go out and try to track it as if they would an undiscovered large, you know, mammal, knock yourself out, man. You know, look at migration patterns, possibly food sources, water sources, anything like that. You know, encounter density according to the season, whatever you want to do, treat it like a biological thing. If you want to go out and sit in the middle of a field and like burn incense and play a flute, knock yourself out, man. You know,
Yeah.
one of these days, maybe one of us is going to figure this out and answer the question. And I just, at this point, I think that we've gone decades now with a pretty decent amount of people being involved in this stuff, and we haven't really advanced it. You know, our best evidence is still that Patterson Gimlin film. You know,
We hit a
it's,
single and we're still stuck on first base.
well, yeah, and that's the thing is that I think that that's a. I always say this when people, and we were talking about this earlier, when people go, well, especially when it's like the hardcore skeptics or the naysayers or the people that think that the whole topic is just silly. You know, well, why haven't we found Bigfoot yet? Well, I mean, technically, Bigfoot's found every day by the people
Mhm.
that encounter it. It's discovered multiple times. You know, it's probably being at this moment while we're talking, somebody's out there having their first experience as we speak. You
Mhm.
know, so it's discovered, but why has it been officially discovered? Why would it be? You know, why would it be? It's come on, man. I mean, there's a handful of people out there looking for it,
Yep.
varying degrees of seriousness. And the fact that the majority of them got very, very hidebound into these like Bigfoot hunting tropes that haven't really given us really any solid results at this point, you know.
Right.
So that's what I'm all about, man. I mean, you know, try something. If it doesn't work, shelve it, try something else, maybe circle back to it later. And you know, I'll talk about the Dogman phenomenon to a certain extent because I was very much uh, an anti Dogman being a possibility at this point. You know what I'm saying? It just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
It quite honestly, it still doesn't make sense to me. But I guess it doesn't have to make sense to me for
Yeah.
it to exist. But we,
A platypus
you know,
doesn't make sense to me, but it
none of this makes
exists.
sense. This
Yeah.
is what kills me about the Bigfoot culture is that people will. There's a term that was brought up in, and it was usually used in like parapsychology and ufology. It's called the boggle threshold. For people that follow our stuff, I talk about it all the time, and it's this weird, just quirk of people that they will allow themselves to believe in the existence of weird stuff only up to a certain threshold, and it's an arbitrarily, you know, projected line, and then anything past that just boggles their mind.
Yeah.
They won't believe in it. And I'm always just like, when you come to grips with the fact that there's a large hairy hominid, regardless of what it is, regardless of what its origins are, when you come to grips with that, and that it's existing alongside humanity in a place like 21st century America, and it's officially denied existing, your whole reality should be shaken up at that point. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I mean,
Yep.
I wasn't either, so I can kind of see where people are like that. You know, I was very open to a flesh and blood Bigfoot. And then when we started having experiences, I struggled with that a lot. People that follow Hellbent Holler, it's kind of a running joke at this point because after the Dogman thing, I just basically gave up any pretense of trying to keep a filter on what's possibly out there. The sky's the limit. man.
Yeah.
I mean, there's giant ape men running around the woods.
Yeah.
I have to admit that that's true. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what they are. There's upright canid-like creatures running around North and South America,
Mhm.
and they're being seen by lots of people. And
Yeah.
that should be biologically impossible, but it's
From
still happening. So once you get to that point, you've just got to you got to be honest with yourself and just go, I have no clue what the hell's going on out here. I have no clue what's real and what's not real. So we don't really poo-poo people's stories anymore.
right. Yeah.
I don't believe everything I hear, but that's because of the elements of the story, not the subject matter.
Right. So, out of all of the expeditions that you've been on,
Mhm.
which one has really left left its mark, so to speak, on you?
That's a good question. A few for different reasons. The LBL investigation that we did, we just because of the area that we're in of the country, the middle part of summer is very difficult to operate in. We were talking about that earlier as well.
Mhm.
Insanely high humidity. It's very, very hot in the south. It has been for the past few years. The equipment doesn't function very well. We're very thermal imager heavy. We run a lot of thermal imaging equipment, and a lot of times when the when it's 110, 112 degrees out and it's heavy humidity, body heat doesn't stand out too well, and especially when there's lots of foliage and everything like that. So usually that hottest month of the year, we wouldn't be quite as active, and we'd spend that time, working on equipment, repairs, doing whatever. So there was one summer when we really weren't doing that much and we weren't really that active online. And we've got a YouTube channel, but we're really not YouTubers. We're investigators, and we like to share our work with people, and that's the best platform for it. But we don't do a lot of the normal YouTube stuff. So at the time, we really weren't that well known, even in our area, and we started to get. The first one was another Bigfoot researcher that I'd known for a while, real flesh and blood, straight laced as far as like Bigfoot stuff goes. And he got in touch with me and he goes, "Hey, I'm going to give you this report. I don't know what to do with it. The reason why I'm giving it to you is because it's right up the road from you. It was in North Carolina, a real short distance away from us." He and his family had a cabin and were basically in a cabin up there in the mountains during Christmas time. And his daughter was a collegiate runner. So she goes out, and I'd have to check my notes. I think it was Christmas morning. It might have been Christmas Eve morning, but I want to say Christmas morning. She went out. She's a collegiate runner. She runs every day, even if it's Christmas, she's got to stay in shape. So she's out running and she hears something behind her and she witnesses a very large canine-like creature come out of the brush and get onto the path behind her on all fours. So she just, starts running. She looks over her shoulder just in time to see it rise up on two legs and start running. So at that point, she just puts in the gas, runs into the cabin. She's hyperventilating, very upset. So, my friend is like, if this was anybody other than my daughter, I'd say that she was lying. He goes, "I didn't see it myself, but I believe her. You're near there. What do you think about it?" And I'm just kind of going, to me, it sounds like your daughter saw a black bear, man, and maybe the imagination filled in the gaps. But anyway, it was interesting because it was right near us. And somehow that opened up the floodgates for it. And we've never really been able to understand why, other than just some weird synchronicity. We start getting reports stretching from Boone, North Carolina, going in on a line southeast of just constantly people reporting, just call it dogman activity, although they weren't using the term dogman necessarily.
Yeah.
And you don't really hear that term when you're actually talking to witnesses outside of the cryptid community. We'd hear the term werewolves. We'd hear all sorts of stuff. So we're kind of amused at first, and then we're kind of bewildered, and then we're just like, what is going on? And we'd go and we'd meet some of these witnesses and extremely believable people, and so, but even then we're having a hard time coming to grips with it, man. We were involved with Bigfoot stuff, and I was kind of open to some of the paranormal stuff being real. But werewolves, man, that's a bridge too far, even for somebody who was open to a lot of weird stuff. So we decided we were going to basically kind of go check out some Dogman hotspots, and we decided the LBL was going to be the first place we went to. And the whole time we're cracking jokes, we're making jokes about the whole thing. We're basically doing it because it's too damn hot to go on these like 10 and 15-mile hikes with heavy backpacks and all these batteries and equipment down here in the mountains. So we basically just kind of did it on a lark. We went to the LBL, which is a Dogman hotspot, starting with, well, before the 1982 massacre that supposedly happened, but there's a rich history of that sort of lore from that area.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to look into the Dogman phenomenon, that's usually one of the places that jumps out the fastest to you. Michigan Dogman, Beast of Bray Road, the Beast of LBL, because of the 82 massacre that may or may not have happened. So we decided to go there and like kind of check it out. But when I say we're making fun of it the whole time, we're making fun of it the whole time, man. Just posting memes about it or whatnot. So it's kind of like it's kind of like a legend trip, kind of like the first thing that got us involved in this, but something we weren't taking very seriously, because it's hard to take that topic seriously, until you experience it. So we decided to go to the LBL. I did a lot of research. It's one of the things that Jesse and I are really good at doing, is connecting some dots and doing the book work that sometimes is kind of lacking in the community, So I was able to kind of figure out where the 82 massacre supposedly took place at. We're able to really kind of do a lot of like legwork before we went. And it was mostly just a cryptid sightseeing trip that we were going on. And it's funny because I used the LBL expedition, the first one, even though we weren't taking it that serious, I used it as an excuse to buy a really expensive thermal imager. And it was crazy. I got a pulsar. It was insanely expensive. And I kind of used that as my justification for buying this thermal imager that I wanted. And I remember, because we were right down to the wire and I didn't think we were going to get it in time. We were even making arrangements with a buddy of ours I don't want to leave like a $5,000 thermal, on my porch for like a week. I was making arrangements for a buddy of mine to come by and get it. And well, lo and behold, we got it right before we were leaving. It worked out perfectly. So we go to the LBL, and it's an outdoor recreation area. There's welcome centers there, So when I got there, one of the things that kind of caught me by surprise is that, there's infrastructure there. There's welcome centers, there's structured campgrounds, RV camps, stuff like that. And then the other thing that really struck me is like, once you got outside of those areas, how just empty the place was. When you get outside of a handful of areas where people congregate, the rest of it's very, very empty and there's no people there. But so we're going around and it was weird. It was right around midsummer. It was right around midsummer. Like the following night was going to be Midsummer Eve. And it was insanely hot. I was thinking it would be a little cooler because it was in Kentucky. No such luck. So we go there, and Jesse and I don't do a lot of stationary work. I mean, we do sometimes if it calls for it, and we'll set up like stationary, like observation equipment, but we found we've had the best luck just going on foot into the wild, man. And, people always tell us not to do that. You got to stay stationary. You got to be quiet. And I'm like, no, you're not hiding from anything out here. Anything that's out here knows you're here.
Yep.
Anything that's out here would by de facto have to be so in tune with its environment and would have the necessary senses capable of staying hidden. It knows you're here. Yep. So the whole goal is to go out on foot, be kinetic, go out into the woods, We do a lot of like traveling through the woods at night. That's our MO. And we either want to like make something curious or piss something off enough that it shows itself to us, So we're traversing around, fairly close to the spot where that 82 Dogman attack, which I'm sure anybody watching your show is at least familiar with the bare bones portions of that story. There was a family in an RV that was supposedly attacked by a Dogman in 1982 and killed, and there was a resulting cover-up. So we're going along, the woods, Kentucky woods, right before midsummer. It's insanely noisy. insects, whatnot. And we're in an area, we're in a particular area, and the woods just go quiet, man, and we start hearing something moving through the forest, pretty sizable, coming towards us. So, we've had that happen before, and our usual MO is to one person focus on that, and then the other person start checking our backs and our sides. We basically go back to back. So Jesse we turned, we had red headlamps on at that point to preserve our night vision. We turned those off, and Jesse's kind of like trying to pay attention to whatever is going through the woods in front of her. So I've got my back to her, and I've got this new thermal imager with me, man. And we had just been using it. There's a power line cut through that portion of the LBL. And that power line cut goes over a hill. And we had been watching deer on the thermal imager. And it was so hot. And it had been so hot for the past few days. The ground still had so much heat. It was kind of hard to make the deer out when they had the hillside to their backs. But when they got to the top of the crest of the hill and they were silhouetted against the sky, you could see them very easily. I got this new thermal imager. I'm just trying to get used to it. And it's cool to look at stuff on thermal imager, whether anything's happening weird or not. We're looking at deer. So I've got it in my hand and I'm scanning, from my right to my left, and I go past something and I snap back to it. And it's something that's just giving off massive amounts of heat. The woods were really hot. The woods had been the longest day of the year. It had been extremely hot. Deer give off a lot of body heat, and when they had foliage or hillside behind them, they didn't stand out as well. Whatever this is, it's blazing hot. It's so much hotter than its surroundings. And I'm looking at it, and I don't know what I'm looking at, and we had been taking photos with it because it's one of those things like a lot of these thermal imagers, they have built-in memory, but not a lot, and I didn't want to waste a lot of my memory taking video of these deer. So we'd just been snapping photos of it. So I snapped a photo of whatever this thing was, and it shifted a little bit. And I'm like, so it's moved like right in front of my eyes. So I snap another photo of it, and I had my flashlight was hanging from my left wrist on a lanyard. And I'm kind of having an adrenaline dump because I don't know what the hell this is. And I kind of try to flip my flashlight up, which I've done 100 times before, but I fumble it. So I fumble everything and I make a little bit of noise and I hit it with the flashlight. There's nothing there. I look back when the thermal, whatever it was, is gone. And I'm just standing there and I'm going, what the hell did I just see? That wasn't a bear. That wasn't a deer. That wasn't a feral hog. That wasn't a wild dog. That wasn't a coyote. And I just look at Jessie and she's like, what's going on? And I go, I think we need to get out of this area and get to an area where we have a little bit more visibility around us. So we moved out of there, and she's just the whole time she's going, what did you see? And I'm like, I don't know what I just saw. I don't know what it was. It was alive. It moved. And I don't know if you've ever seen the thermal image we got in the LBL, but whenever we go on these like longer expeditions, in certain areas, we will get a hotel room kind of like out of the area a little bit, mostly because, well, a lot of times in an area like that, you got to go shower the ticks off every couple of days, but mostly to store our equipment in, because we've got thousands of dollars worth of equipment, and we don't want to leave that in a tent or in the back of a truck if we're not using it. So we usually have a base of operations out. And we left and we went back to that hotel room, and excuse me, Jessie goes to sleep, and I'm laying there just kind of going, what did I see, man? What was that? So I get up, and, when you're using a thermal imager, you're looking at a little screen. It's right up next to your eyeball, but it's still a small screen, maybe an inch and a half, something like that. So I get up, and I look at it on a laptop, and I'm just staring at it. And, we're right outside the LBL, so we've got cell signal there, and I'm just texting like people that I know. Can I send you this to look at? What do you think? And I'm texting people that I know that are predator hunters that do a lot of like thermal imaging. And they're going, well, I can tell you what it's not, Basically what I saw something that was approximately 6.5 feet tall with a muzzle. And it was upright observing us out of a gully, because we went back the next day and I found where it was. And that's when I realized that whatever it was standing there, and the upper portion of its body was revealed, and its lower portion was in this gully. It was basically standing there leaning on the gully observing us. We had no visible light at that point. So I think that it thought that we couldn't see it. But like a thermal imager doesn't emit anything. It picks up on passive heat, like heat radiation. So it's not like it emits any like infrared light or anything like that at all. And I'm building kind of a narrative here, but I think it was watching us. It was observing us, thinking we couldn't see it. And when I was facing it and I stayed facing it, looking at it through the thermal imager, trying to figure out what it was, it shifted a little bit to kind of like duck down a little bit more. And then I think when it realized that I could see it, when I started fumbling with stuff, it dropped back in that gully. And it either moved off or it was still crouched down there when we left out, you know. But I'm looking at it, and to me, I'm gonna be honest with you, it looked like I'd gotten a man-sized bat, because it's these large, oversized, pointed ears, and then a muzzle. And to me, it didn't scream canine; it screamed like a bat. And even other people were saying the same thing, you know. And I'm going, well, whatever it was taller than I was, because I got in that same gully, and it wasn't huge. It wasn't 7 or 8 feet tall, but I'm 6'3", so it was maybe like 6'6", something like that, give or take an inch. So, and then, you know, we started talking to some people that had been like Elijah Henderson with Cryptid Studies Institute, who's done a lot of work in the LBL. And, you know, he's showing me witness sketches. And the defining feature of what people have been seeing in that area are these oversized, large-sized Anubis ears, basically. You know, the German Shepherd ears. They look too comically large at that point. So we ruled out all natural local wildlife there. Whatever I saw was about 6.5 feet tall with a muzzle, upright, very large, oversized ears that behaved in a predatory manner, observing us from cover. And then when it realized we saw it, you know, like a lot of ambush predators will do, when they know that they've been seen, they don't attack, they go away. You know, tigers, for example, are ambush predators. People in areas with tigers will often wear masks on the backs of their heads so that tigers think that they're being observed, so they're not as likely to attack. So whatever it was kind of displaying ambush predator behavior. So I can't say that what I saw was a dogman, because I didn't see it with my naked eye, but the heat signature and the silhouette of it and the behavior and the size and all of that matches up pretty much 100% with what people have been reporting seeing in the LBL. Martin Groves, you know, who had his famous encounter in the LBL, when he saw it, he was just like, the ears, oh my God, it's the ears, because what he saw had very pronounced oversized pointed ears. Other people that we've talked to that have had similar sightings and similar encounters down there have looked at this and gone, you know, it matches up with what we saw at that point. So when you ask the investigation that had the most impact on me, we've had other weird stuff happen, and we've documented other weird stuff on camera. And when you get down to it, we've probably documented other stuff that's weirder on camera. But for me, it was sitting in that hotel room after spending, I don't know how much time at that point, making fun of the Dogman subject, because it sounded silly, you know, and then just sitting there going, well, what the hell else is real at this point? You know, what else have we kind of, you know, just naysayed and just kind of dismissed? What else is real out there? So for me, that was the big one. That was the one where I just walked away going, listen, I've got to just markedly just change my approach to this. And it was a humbling experience for me. This whole thing has been a very humbling experience for me. You know, you've been doing this for a while. You run into a lot of egos.
Yep.
With people involved in this. And that's baffling to me, because this has not been anything that I'm like, I enjoy doing it. It's my life's calling, I think, at this point, you know.
Yeah.
If we shut down the Hellbent Holler channel tomorrow, we'll keep doing this. We just won't put the stuff out publicly. You can't walk away from it once you know it's real. But for me, it's humbling. It's very humbling to kind of just stand there and go, you know, what I thought was real is not real. Man's not top of the food chain.
Nope.
You know, we're going out there. Jesse and I are pretty physically capable people. We've amassed a pretty good skill set at this point. We're using some really good equipment, and we still struggle trying to document this stuff. It's so far beyond us, you know. It's a humbling experience. And it all started in that hotel room, looking at those thermal images on a laptop, man. It felt like my entire world was just crumbling underneath my feet at that point. And that was like, I guess, the real start of what we're doing now at that point, when we just kind of we walked away very changed people after that.
Yeah, and I'm extremely humbled. I've been humbled so many times in this community, not because I walk around with an ego, because I think anybody who knows me, uh,
Mhm.
I'm very appreciative just for a chance to talk to somebody.
Mhm.
But I've had people who've trusted me with some amazing video or some amazing pictures under the pretenses that I never show it.
Mhm.
They just want someone to know that this is real.
Yeah.
And I have 2 pieces of video that I will never share. I trust me, I want to. I wanna share them so bad. I can talk about them, I just can't share
Mhm.
'em. I can't show them to anybody, because they trusted me enough to email me and say, "Hey, please look at this. I just need to get this off my chest.
Yeah.
Can I talk to you?" And yeah, so now comes the part of the rapid fire questions. Okay.
All right. Lay it on me.
All right. So, Bigfoot or Dogman, which one do you not want to run into at night?
I'm going to probably, Dogman's the obvious, easy answer.
Mhm.
Um, Bigfoot, however, I'd have to stick with Dogman. Although I think that it's not something that I understand. There's a lot of trauma that goes along with those cases as well, especially in my area, the Southern Appalachians. It's not the friendly forest giant down here. It's something that most people fear and try to avoid. But Dogman still, because all of those encounters are negative. I think that our encounter had a chance to go negative. I think if that is what I saw, and I don't know what else it could be. I think it just was kind of like surprised that I knew it was there, and that caused it to kind of change. And maybe it was just going to observe us. I don't know, but Dogman, it's rarely, if ever, a good encounter at that point.
That's true. What is the creepiest sound you've ever heard in total darkness while out on investigation?
We have heard that I've actually heard at the time would probably be, uh, and it's one of those humbling experiences. Back when we just had that original camera that I mentioned earlier, that the battery life sucked. I'm constantly changing batteries out. We had stopped to get some food and kind of recharge the batteries with like a little mobile setup that I had. So we're cooking hot dogs next to a fire at our campsite. We hiked back to that. And the camera's charging, it's off. We're just talking about, not much has happened, what's our next step. And we start hearing we thought it was an ambulance siren at first. And we're just sitting there looking at each other going, how the hell did they get an ambulance up here? It just rises and falls like this. It sounds like an ambulance siren. And then it kept getting louder and louder and louder, and to the point where it was kind of like painful to hear. And we just had this moment of like, that's not a siren. That's not an ambulance. That's not a rescue, vehicle coming up here. And we just ran over. I got the camera. I got the battery that had the most juice, snapped it in. And right as I hit record, it just drops.
Oh.
So we just have this moment where we're standing there going, whatever that was close. And obviously it was close enough to see me hitting record to stop at that moment. So what in the hell's in these woods around it? We never found it. You know what I'm saying? And it's just one of those things that when I say humbling experience, stuff like that happens, man. Because no matter how well prepared you go out or no matter what sort of equipment you use, you have these moments, this kind of trickster effect type thing that, is always just one step ahead of you. But yeah, that just having to sit there and go, all right, well, what was it? And how close it is to us. And we're obviously within eyesight of it. So yeah, that was an uncomfortable night. So
I think I already know the answer to this one, but thermal or night vision, what's your go-to?
thermal, definitely. night vision's got its place for just some practical reasons. Night vision, obviously, you can record on much longer. You know, it looks better if you're trying to present evidence to people, you know, especially documentary style evidence. This is what we do, you know.
Yeah.
So people will sometimes say that we're like researchers, and I'm going, you know, we do a fair amount of research with it. But at our heart, we're investigators, and we're almost like documentary filmmakers at this point, just trying to document this stuff to show people that it's real. So it's easier to do with night vision cameras. However, thermal under the right circumstances is great. Do you know what I'm saying? It's great, but it's not foolproof. You know, we're in a very, very, very heavily wooded area. The area that we're in is a temperate rainforest. Basically, we get more rain in this particular area than they get in Seattle, you know, the Pacific Northwest, and the vegetation reflects that. So thermal, you know, it's defeated by, you can stand behind a tree and you're not picking you up on thermal, you know.
Yeah.
So it's not foolproof, but under the right circumstances, thermal imaging is something to be reckoned with, definitely.
Okay. Most underrated state for cryptids.
South Carolina, where we're at. And that is, if you look at, let's just take Bigfoot, for example. If you look at any sort of Bigfoot mapping project, Georgia, very, very high concentration. North Carolina, very, very high concentration. South Carolina is smack dab in the middle, and it has a very, very, very low number of reported sightings. Yeah. And people they'll equate a lack of reported sightings with a lack of activity, and that's not the case in the slightest. Some of the most active areas we know about are within the borders of South Carolina. There's just a culture of the South's a weird place, man. You know, the South's a weird place. We were talking about this earlier. Yep. You know, this region of the South's undergoing a lot of population shift right now, but that's not making the culture any different. If anything else, it's becoming more solidly Southern in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And a lot of these areas have a very rich tradition of oral reporting, you know, an oral history that goes along. There's really not a tradition of, let me get on the internet and find a Bigfoot group to file this report with. So I'd have to say this state right here is, even living here, I'm still constantly surprised at the stuff that's just right under our nose, man. I mean, we'll hear of stuff sometimes that happened less than 20 miles from where we live at, and we just never heard about it before because nobody ever talked about it. So
yeah, awesome. One piece of equipment or one piece of gear that you never go out in the woods without.
Night vision camera is the one thing, because our big thing is, if we can't document it for the purposes of the project Hellbent Holler, it didn't happen. You know, we've had some crazy stuff happen to us that we never got on camera, that we don't even talk to people about because it's just another story. There's no meat to the bones. But once you get past that night vision camera thing, we are big proponents of, we call them the missing 411 rules. You know, you don't go out alone, so we're always with each other. You go armed. I know a lot of people are very opposed to that as far as like Bigfoot research goes.
Not me.
Woods are a dangerous place, man. You know, I don't take a real soft and cuddly view of a lot of this stuff just because of my own experiences and where I'm at. And then a GPS, a really good GPS unit with a personal locator beacon. Generally, whenever I'm talking to people that are starting to get involved in this, and I'm like, listen, if you're going to set around a campsite somewhere like a KOA and hit your flashlight every once in a while, you could be all right. But if you start doing what Jesse and I do, which is, you know, you've driven hours off a paved road and now you're 10 miles on foot from your vehicle, you need a personal locator beacon. You know, you need something constantly putting your position back to somebody. And then you've got that SOS feature that, you know, because if I fall and break my leg, Jesse's not carrying me out of the, you know, she's 5'2". Yeah. You know, she's a tough chick, but you know, I'm 6'3", like 230. She's not carrying me out of the woods, man. So so definitely personal locator beacons, probably the most important, just singular piece of equipment we've got.
Perfect. One word that describes the Appalachian woods after midnight?
Primeval. It's you go into certain areas and the Appalachian area is just like anywhere else under the sun. The Smoky Mountain National Forest, most national park is the most visited national park in the country. Okay.
Mhm.
All that population is very centralized in certain areas. Okay.
Yep.
The touristy spots, hiking trails. You get 100 yards off a hiking trail, you might as well be on a different planet. And just because of the topography of this area, you're dealing with a lot of, rigid peaks, valleys. It's very mountainous terrain. It doesn't have the height that, obviously they have out west with the Rockies, but it's very rugged terrain. It's part of the reason why certain families, were very insulated and just cut off by it. A lot of these areas are not very conducive to traveling on foot. And
Right.
when you do travel through them on foot, you don't travel through them very quickly. So you get out into some of these areas and you just stop and you just go, I don't feel like I'm in Southeast America right now. I feel like I've been transported back in time. It always has a very primeval, mystical kind of feel to it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. What's scarier, the unknown of what's in front of you, or what's waiting or watching you from behind?
The behind aspect of it, definitely. We do a lot of our stuff at night. People can always say that, oh, you shouldn't do Bigfoot investigations at night. Most of the sightings happen during the daytime. Well, that's because most people are out during the daytime, and it's easier to have a sighting when there's light to have a sighting with. In our experience, the majority of the activity takes place after the sun sets. And once that sun sets, it's very difficult to tell what's going on behind you.
Right.
If you were to see me, because I do all the filming for Hellbent Holler, I always tell people that it's kind of just like me documenting basically Jesse out there. But I do a lot of over my shoulder looking, I do a lot of filming with one hand while I'm looking at something else over my shoulders. So that's something that always just kind of worries me, especially when you start diving into some of the earlier missing 411 cases where people would be hiking in a single line and that last person in line would go missing.
Yep.
And, no one else saw or heard anything. So definitely what's
Yep.
behind for me.
Sure. If you could interview one historical figure about cryptids, who would it be?
Wow. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. You familiar with the story of the Beast of Gévaudan from France? Are you familiar with that at all?
Werewolf?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There was a guy that killed it,
Mm-hmm.
supposedly. I would like to interview him to see what he saw. That is one of the more interesting cases just because of the historical context and the fact that it was documented and it did seem to happen. And you actually did have somebody who killed one of these things. That's somebody that I'm always like, man, I said not necessarily like Roger Patterson or something like that. I'd like to talk to that guy to see what happened that day.
I'd pick either Teddy Roosevelt or
That was my
Daniel Boone.
number. Teddy Roosevelt was my one that I was getting ready to go with, but then I'm like, nah, the Beast of Gévaudan guy.
Yeah, either Teddy Roosevelt or Daniel Boone. So, let's see here. Favorite field meal while you're out on the field? What's your favorite thing to eat while you're out there?
Surprisingly enough, we carry a lot of freeze-dried food with us. We usually end up living off Pop-Tarts when we're out there for a couple of days, man, because we're usually eating on the move. We don't want to take time to do it. So Pop-Tarts is usually it. That's a running joke with Hellbent Holler, is that when we get out of the woods, we've been out there for 3 to 5 days. I don't want to see another Pop-Tart until I'm back out in the woods again, man. So,
All right, favorite Pop-Tart?
Blueberry.
Oh, dude, blueberry and raspberry. Those are my favorite.
Yeah.
All right. Government. Do you think they know more than what they're letting on?
So, yes and no. I think that the government is not a monolithic entity. I think that often the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing.
That's 100% truth.
I believe that there are segments of it that know something is going on, but I think that the scary part is that they're just as mystified as the rest of us are. I think that's why a lot of this is kept secret, is because a lot of it's happening outside their control. They can't control it. And that, like I always tell people, I don't have and I know that I don't mean to upset anybody or anything like that. I don't have a warm, fuzzy feeling about a lot of these phenomena, you know?
Right.
I know that people have stories about their forest friends and all that, and that's great. My gut instinct is that even if it's not out to get you, it's not your friend, you know?
Right.
And I think that if the government, the segments of it that know about it, don't want to admit that. They don't want to admit that there's stuff in our skies that they can't control, that occasionally comes and takes people. They don't want to admit that there's things on the ground, you know, and not just in national forests, sometimes in areas you wouldn't expect them to be at. There's things on the ground, and they sometimes interact with humanity, and it doesn't end well for humanity. And they don't know where they came from, and they don't know how they're here, and they don't know what to do about them. So, yeah, I do think they know about it, but I think that they're just as clueless. They might know a little bit more about us, but I don't think they've got all the answers to it. So,
right. If you could spend one night in any hot spot on Earth, where are you pitching your tent?
right now, there's a spot in Oklahoma that's not very well known, but I've talked to several people that I trust from out there, and it is extremely active. It's extremely physically active. As far as a place that's pretty well known, the Four Corners area. The Four Corners area in the Southwest, just because it's just such a wide variety of stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with J.C. Johnson, who was just a amazing adventurer and cryptozoologist. He's passed away, but he did a lot of work in the Four Corners, and the stuff that he would come across down there was just I had a hard time wrapping my head around it then, and even now being more open to this stuff, I can kind of go, well, don't have any preconceived notions. I still have a hard time wrapping around it. Packs of baby T-Rexes, all sorts of just like winged humanoid type activity, all sorts of crazy stuff that the Native American, the indigenous people there have been dealing with for hundreds of years that people are, experiencing up into this time. So yeah, Four Corners area, definitely.
Okay. And the last question. What's your favorite cryptid?
Favorite cryptid?
I have two.
What are your two? I ask you, I'll spin it around. What's your two?
Bigfoot and the Kushtaka.
Kushtaka. Okay. That's the otter creature, right? From Alaska. So yeah.
Southeast Alaska.
With me, and this will probably change, but lately I've been extremely, extremely interested in, let's just call it the Kentucky goblin phenomenon, the white subterranean hairless type creatures.
Okay.
Just because of A, it's always interested me. B, we have come across some people who have had some really compelling encounters with creatures like that. And it's not just, Kentucky's the one that everybody knows about from the Hopkinsville stuff. But I mean, you start looking through cryptozoology, there are creatures that match up with that. The Dover demon, a lot of even alien gray activity kind of matches up with it. The thing it's really kind of just been, I really wish we could get a timely witness encounter that we could go out and investigate right now, because it's just fascinating to me right now. And one of the things that not really a lot of people are making any connection to, is you have these South American, like the alien mummies that are really in the news a lot nowadays for people that are into the UFO phenomenon, and the UFO community. Well, the first wave that came out, those were fake. Those were fake. Those had been made to kind of emulate the real ones and I don't know if you've seen any of the recent stuff on there, but you've got some world-class doctors and scientists going, I don't know what this is, but this was a living creature once.
Yeah.
And, they're viewing it through the lens of this is alien activity. And I'm going, you guys found this in a cave. These are small, what appear to be hairless humanoids that look very similar to what people in and around the Mammoth Cave system have been reporting, in North America.
Yep.
Nobody's really making that connection yet that when you don't have to scratch the surface much to go that what these creatures look like is exactly what people experienced in Hopkinsville. It's exactly what people have experienced in and around that region for hundreds of years. And I think now they've actually found some preserved deceased ones. So that's really fascinating to me right now, as a kind of a sister hominid species that might exist underground, and the archetype, white, hairless skin, large eyes, so that's
subterranean cryptid.
And when I look at it, that's got a real likelihood of being something that has a good chance of actually existing. So
yeah. Well, Joe, it's that time.
Hey,
my friend, I am so grateful for you coming on. I'm so glad that I went and met you and Jesse and MK Ultra. You guys were a group of good people, and yeah, you guys are everything I thought you guys were going to be. So I truly appreciate you guys.
Hey, man, pleasure's all mine, my friend.
All right. If you want to hang out for just a couple minutes, I'm going to close it up and I'll be right back. You guys, one of my favorites. I'm going to tell you right now, one of my favorite interviews. Honestly, you guys, Joe is just a vessel of knowledge when it comes to not only what these things could possibly be, but on how you would go out and research and investigate and search and look and document things for this. So, you guys, again, I just can't say thank you enough. Let's check out Hellbent Holler on YouTube. I've watched probably about 10 episodes. The first one I watched, they were investigating, I think it was a Bigfoot encounter where it took a dog. They were walking around some river. It might have been a Dogman, I'm not sure, but they found hair samples, and I got locked in. So it's one I watch every morning. I'm trying to get caught up with them. But you guys, again, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight, checking it out. Again, thank you for all the support. And again, if you guys have had an encounter and you'd like to come on the show, hit me up at the Cryptid Podcast 72@gmail.com. That's the Cryptid Podcast 72@gmail.com. Can't get out of here without saying what my buddy Josh always says. You guys stay prayed up. And as I always like to say, remember, a legend always begins with a sighting. Take care, guys. I'll see you on the next show.
I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?